ओम श्री परमात्मने नमः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। श्रीमद् भागवत गीता साधका संजीवनी 6th chapter ध्यान योगा verses 5 to 9. Inspiration for redeeming the self and the marks of the God realized soul. In the previous verse, Lord Krishna explained the marks of a yogi, and by giving the terms yada, when, and tada, then, explained that man is free in attaining yoga, namely in attaining self-realization. So, Lord Krishna inspires every human being to lift himself by his own self. Verse 5. उधारेद आत्मन आत्मनाम नात्मनाम अवसादेत आत्मेवरे आत्मनो बांधुर आत्मेवरे पुर आत्मनः. Let a man lift himself by his self. Let him not degrade himself, for he himself is his friend and he himself is his enemy. Comment. A man should lift himself by his own self. It means that he should lift himself above the body, senses, mind, intellect, and life breath, because all of them belong to matter, nature, and they have identity with matter, while he himself is a fragment of God and has identity with him. Man possesses discrimination, by utilizing which a striver can lift himself and can realize God. A striver, by following the discipline of knowledge, can discriminate between the real and the unreal and thus gets established in his own self. A striver, following the discipline of devotion, accepts that he is God's and God is his, and this feeling leads him to God realization. A striver, following the discipline of action by using discrimination, utilizes the so-called his body, senses, mind, and intellect in rendering service to others, and thus by breaking off his affinity with them, gets established in his own self. Thus, his discrimination leads him to God realization, whatsoever discipline he may follow. An exceptional fact about God realization. Think of I am not body, because the body changes while I remain the same. This body is not mine, because I can't keep this body healthy and in my possession as long as I wish. This body is not for me, because if it had been for me, I might have not had any other desire. Secondly, this body is kaleidoscopic, while I am eternal. How can this kaleidoscopic body be of any use to the eternal self? Thirdly, if it had been for me, it would have lived with me forever, but it does not live. Therefore, if a man thinks seriously and sticks to the thought, I am not body, the body is not mine, and the body is not for me, he will realize God spontaneously. Now a question arises, why Lord Krishna has said that a man should lift himself by his own self, when God, preceptors, saints, and the scriptures also lead a man to God realization? The answer is that all of them will lead us to God realization only if we have faith in them, and it depends upon us whether we have faith or we don't have faith in them. It is because of the lack of faith and desire that several incarnations of the Lord and many saints and liberated souls could not enable us to realize God, but those who had faith in them realized Him. Therefore, a striver, by having faith in them and by obeying them, should realize God. It is a unique opportunity for us that this human body has been bestowed upon us in this Kali age so that we may realize God not only once but several times during this life. But we can realize Him only when we ourselves want to do so. In the preceding verse, Lord Krishna declared that a man himself is his friend and he himself is his enemy. How is he himself his friend and enemy? The Lord provides an answer in the verse that follows. Verse 6. बंधुर आत्मात्मनस्तस्य येनात्मेवात्मना चित्तः अनात्मनस्तु शत्रुत्वे वर्तेतात्मेव शत्रुवत्. To him who has conquered his base or lower self by the divine or higher self, his own self is the friend. But to him who has not subdued the lower self, his own self acts as the foe. Comment. Nothing resides in a man except the pure self. He does not at all depend on the lower self, namely body, senses, mind and intellect, etc. He renounces his dependence on them altogether and gets established in his own self. He is the one who has conquered himself. He who thinks that the body, senses, mind, intellect, riches and prosperity, etc. are necessary for him and who depends on them is his own foe. He thinks that by accepting them as his own, he has controlled them and conquered them. But the fact is that he has been defeated by them. When he takes his defeat as victory, it means that his own self is his foe. A man, by accepting his affinity with the body, senses, mind, and intellect, etc., thinks that he has become their master, but actually he has become their slave. Though he does not think to harm himself, yet the consequences are harmful. And so Lord Krishna has declared that his own self acts as his foe because dependence on the mundane finally misleads a man to the shackles of birth and death. What happens to the man who has conquered his base self by the divine self has been described in the next 3 verses. Verse 7. Jitatmanaha prashantasya Paramatma samahitaha Shitoshna sukha dukkeshu Ratha manapmanyoha. The self-controlled man whose mind is perfectly calm in the midst of pairs of opposites such as cold and heat, joy and sorrow, honor and dishonor, is in constant communion with the Supreme Spirit. Comment. In favorable circumstances, a man feels a sort of coldness, while in unfavorable circumstances, he feels a kind of heat. A striver should be cautious that his permanent peace is not disturbed by this seemingly cold and heat. He should not be happy and sad with favorable and unfavorable circumstances. Now, let us try to understand joy and sorrow. 1. Generally, people think that the person who lives in luxury is joyful, but one who can't enjoy luxuries is sorrowful. Second, the man does not possess even the bare necessities of life, but is satisfied with what he possesses and is joyful, while the man who leads a life of luxury but is worried at heart lest the luxuries should be lost is sad or sorrowful. In the Gita, Sukha and Dukkha have been described in 2 ways. The favorable circumstances and the pleasure derived out of them are called Sukha. Similarly, the unfavorable circumstances and the sorrow derived from them are called dukkha. The past actions result in favorable and unfavorable circumstances, while the actions of the present result in success and failure, joy and sorrow. But the self-controlled man remains perfectly calm and serene in both. How to remain calm in honor and dishonor? In honor, a striver should not think that it is the result of his virtuous or good actions, but he should consider it a virtue of the person who has shown honor to him, while he should think of dishonor as a result of his past actions and should feel obliged to the other person who has purged him of his sins by becoming an instrument in dishonor. Thus, the striver will become calm in honor and dishonor. Verse 8. ज्ञाना विज्ञाना तृप्त आत्मा कूटस्थो विजितेन्द्रियः युक्त इत्युच्यते योगी समालोष्टाश्मा कांचनः. The yogi whose mind is satisfied with jnana, knowledge, and vijnana, wisdom, who remains unshaken in all circumstances, whose senses are subdued, to whom a clod, a stone, and a piece of gold are the same, is spoken of as one who has attained yoga. Comment. To a yogi, a clod, a stone, and a piece of gold are the same. In dealings, he knows the value of each of them. So he keeps gold in the shelf while lets a clod and a stone lie outside. But he remains equanimous in gain and loss. He views all the things of the world with an equal eye because he knows that all of them are transient. He remains established in God who pervades everywhere equally, and his axiomatic equanimity abides in him. Such a karma yogi, satisfied with jnana, knowledge, and vijnana, wisdom, unshaken in all circumstances with senses subdued and equanimous, is spoken of as a yogi, namely one who has attained yoga or equanimity. Verse 9. Suhirna mitrari udasina madhyastha dveshya bandhushu sadhushva api chapapeshu sama buddhir vishishyate. He who regards well-wishers, friends, foes, neutrals, mediators, the hateful, the relatives, saints and sinners alike, stands supreme. Comment. There is description of equanimity in persons. The objects can't perform any action while persons perform actions for themselves and also for others. So, it is difficult for them to have equanimity. Therefore, the person who has a benevolent and impartial attitude to all and regards them alike, even after noticing differences in their conduct, stands supreme. One who is engrossed in the welfare of others like a mother without any selfish motive is called suhrid, disinterested friend, while one who returns good for good is a friend. The foe is he who does evil to others without any cause, but the hateful is one who does evils to others having some selfish motive or any other cause. The neutral is he who remains indifferent to the two groups or men if they are fighting, and the mediator is he who desires compromise for the welfare of both. He has a benevolent and impartial attitude towards his relatives as well as those hostile to him. In the world, people generally have a tendency to observe the actions of others. By doing so, they can't observe their real self, who remains the same, while the actions always undergo changes. Secondly, they specially observe the evil actions of others which mislead the observers to degradation, because by doing so, they attach great importance to those evil actions. Therefore, Lord Krishna in this verse has explained that a yogi regards saints and sinners alike because he views that God alone puts on the appearance of the phenomenon, and so all this is God. Thus the yogi stands supreme. Om Tat Sat. All glories to Sri Partha Sarthi, Lord Shri Krishna. All glories to Bhagavad Vani, Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. Sri Hari Arpanamastu.